Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Daffy's Roundtable. Today, we are once again talking about mountain horned dragons. Marlena is a fellow reptile keeper here in Canada who works with a whole list of incredible reptiles, but today, we are going to talk about Acanthosaura capra. Marlene recently hatched and raised a bunch of beautiful Acanthosaura capras, and so we had to talk to her about her experiences working with them, incubating the eggs, all of the process. We got to know everything we got to know about mountain horned dragons. Am I right? We also, of course, talk about all the other awesome species that Marlene does work with, but the main focus of the episode is mountain horned dragons. Before we dive into the mountain horned dragon talk, allow me to thank Exoterra for sponsoring this podcast and making this episode possible. Exoterra makes quality products for our pet reptiles to make them feel at home. All right, without further ado, everybody please help me welcome Marlene of Lena's Ark. Marlena, hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm very excited to have this conversation. How are
I'm
you?
super excited. I am fantastic. Actually, I'm super excited. This is probably like the first podcast I've ever been on ever.
Awesome.
And it's honestly a bit of a fever dream right now. I was like, oh, this is so cool.
That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. I am sure that this won't be the last, because once people hear what you have to say, I'm sure you'll be getting asked to get on many podcasts. You are keeping and breeding a lot of really cool species, and I'm sure we'll touch on some of them today. But the main reason you're here is because you are also a mountain horned dragon nerd.
Yes.
And we love our mountain horned dragon nerds here.
We do.
So
awesome.
we'll get into the mountain horned dragons and all the other cool species you're keeping. But before that, give us the story, the I guess the Lena's Ark story, or like how did all that start? How did you start keeping reptiles? All of that.
So we've always been kind of like interested in reptiles. Like when I was growing up, like a relative had like a corn snake and got to hold it. It's like, wow, this is like really cool. It's like, why can't I have this as a pet? We had cats, we had dogs, chickens, whole farmyard stuff. We had it all. But the parents were like, nah, nothing scaly, just cats. So, okay. So 2020, it's just before January or just the beginning week of January. I looked at my boyfriend. We were living in an apartment at the time. I was like, you know what? I really want a ball python. It's like, I want a snake. He's like, well, I want a bullfrog. It's like, cool. So it just kind of snowballed from there. It's like, I got the ball python. He got his bullfrog, African bullfrog, the big pixie. He's like this freaking thing. Love him. And we got into like the Indonesian field dragons. I got my Gastrophilus perfectina. And then over the years, like COVID obviously happened and we're stuck inside. And it's like, well, what do you do? And we have these cool little animals and we have all the time in the world to study and research and figure out what they need. And that just kind of kickstarted this whole thing for me. And now that's my life. My living room is just my reptile room. There's only like one piece of furniture in there. It's just a couch.
Just a couch and all cages.
Couch and all enclosures.
That is
even an island designated for them. So
my
parents awesome. Were like, what happened? It's like, where did this come from? It's like, well, you never asked, but it's kind of been here.
If you had let me do this at home, I would have.
Right. If you'd asked me for my 16th birthday, it's like, what do you want? It's like, I want a snake. It's like, well, where do you get that? It's like, I don't know, but I'll find out.
Don't worry. That's
don't
cool.
Worry.
So you went from a ball python in 2020 to keeping and breeding like Gastrophilus persina, frilled dragons, all that kind of stuff very, very quickly.
Actually,
that is awesome.
Surprisingly really fast. And it's kind of, I don't know, I look back on it as like, did I panic shop? Or did I like do okay? But I think we did okay.
Yeah, I think you guys did okay. Like I said, you're working with some really cool species. So do you want to maybe run down some of those species that some of the bigger projects you're working on right now?
Sure, yeah. So obviously the most successful one would be the Gastrophilus persina, but they're kind of like rodents in that they breed a lot, so it's not hard to get them to breed. Yeah. But what's more fascinating is the interactions between each other. The other ones we have working on is the Indonesian field dragons or the Climasaurus kingi. We have the Indonesian, we don't have the Australian, but it's also kind of nice because the Indonesian are poorly represented in the hobby and there's not a whole lot of captive bred. You see a lot of wild caught, so it's nice to be able to provide babies for that. We have, oh my gosh, we have a lot of stuff. I'm working with fire skinks. I'm trying to get those to breed as well. I have a male and female, and I have seen them kind of copulate a little bit, but I've never found eggs or babies. So I'm assuming that's more so just like a husbandry failure on my side or lack of diet. I'm not sure. We have a couple other things. I have the night lizards, tropical night lizards, or the smithy, as I call them. And she's actually given birth twice for me. So I have two babies currently that are thriving. There was one that had some complications shortly after hatching, or not hatching, rather, they're live birth. They're parthenogenetic. So they self-replicate and then they give live birth. So it's kind of like a skink and a mourning gecko had a
that's so cool
freak baby. We have a couple other things. I do have some jeweled lacerdas. I'm looking for a female for them. I have a trio of Australian water dragons, but it's one female and two boys. And I'm still waiting for her to get some size on her because the older male, he's humongous. And she's like maybe a third his size. So I'm nervous of that pairing if that went to south or something.
For sure.
If I have to intervene, like they have a really nasty bite. The smaller male goes for me sometimes, and he's like, "Get out of my enclosure. This is my space." He's like, "Wait, I just have food. Just a second."
That's fascinating. I had Cody on a couple of weeks ago, and he said the same thing about his Australian water. He's like, they don't back off. They're ready to go. Once you come in there, they're like, this
he's
is my
ready
territory.
to charge.
Yeah, that's
like you interfere in his space. He's like, "I'll come at you. I'm not afraid of you." But then he'll do that little bluff, and then he runs.
And then you're like,
okay, oh my God, can they run so fast? He's like, "Come back here." He's like, "Shh, it's okay. Don't make this a negative experience. Please.
I just have food.
I just have food. I just have water." We have a couple anole projects too. We're working with Cuban anoles, and they have given us a couple viable eggs before, but they didn't make full incubation term. The babies, I suspect, unfortunately drowned in their egg. Not sure of the parameters surrounding that, but could have been my incubator. It is like a made one. It's not one of the commercial like Zuneds or any of those. We also have the bearded anoles, Anoles barbatus.
Yeah.
And they've given us eggs as well, and we've actually had some babies hatch, but failure to thrive as well. So obviously, like, we're still new keepers and everything, so that we haven't learned it all, but we're still excited that at least the animals are comfortable enough to reproduce. And of course, we have the mountain horns
as well. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Of course, we have the mountain horn dragons, and that was a lovely little pair we got from Tails and Scales at not last year, but the year before. What was it last year? No, it was last year, 2023. We got it from the Calgary Expo. They were both adults, and we set them up together just in the hopes that they would just get along and not be hostile, to kind of gauge how they would react to each other. And we weren't expecting the first clutch whatsoever. So when she was digging around and she's got this little dirty nose and was like, "Oh, you're so cute." I was like, "Wait, what are you doing?
Why are you digging?
Why are you digging?"
Yeah.
I was like, "Wait, let me get you more dirt, because I didn't set you up with a breeding bin. I just have like a couple inches in there." So I piled all this dirt up amongst the base of the tree she was digging at. And then, a couple minutes later, I go upstairs, come down half hour later, and she's depositing her eggs. And I'm like, "Okay, we have eggs." When did that happen?
And this is exactly what I want to get into in this episode. This whole little, okay.
It was more surprising than anything. And then I'm like looking online. It's like, okay, so what do I incubate these at? And what's the care for the babies like? And there's so little knowledge. And there was a couple of Facebook groups, and I was like, okay, so I'm kind of flying in the dark, but looks like these temperatures, so it was like 75 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit we incubated them at, and I just let them be. It's like, okay, you just do your thing, and hopefully you thrive. And about 120 days, 4-ish months, they hatched. So it's like, oh my God, there's babies, and they're so cute.
They are adorable. Okay. But before we get into the babies,
of course,
because I'm very excited, and I do have a picture. The picture you send me, I'll maybe pop that in here as well, so you guys can see how cute those babies are.
And I can send you like more pictures and stuff of like
please
them
do
as they progress.
please do, yeah. So let's just take it back. So you got the pair from Tails and Scales at the expo.
Yeah.
Where do you think they were roughly close to adult size? Did you have to grow them out a little bit, or were they just ready to go as soon as they came?
I think they were already adults.
Okay.
They were pretty good size. we had them. Well, let's see, we got them August, and she laid her eggs in October, so they
So
weren't
sorry, she was
together
ready
for
to have
very
it.
long. She must have been ready to go. I don't think they were keeping them together prior. They may have.
Yeah.
It may have be from like a different male that they had them. We only saw the
Right.
one pair on the table, but that was when we got there. And gosh only knows how many they had and how many they sold afterwards or
Yeah.
before. But yeah, so that part, it was kind of happenstance. Like I didn't
Yeah.
encourage it, I didn't force it. It just it happened. So it's like, okay. So I'm definitely no expert. I was like, okay, just set them up, hope for the best.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, she did end up crashing. I'm not sure if it was another clutch that she laid, because we read a little bit later that they can crash after having a clutch.
Yeah.
That the
I've
females
had
can.
multiple females crash, either trying to lay the clutch or right
Yeah,
before they were about to. It's a very interesting. It definitely weakens them to a certain extent.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
And we tried to keep her like fed as much as possible and watered, and then our misting system also had a failure and we didn't catch it in time because we were both working full-time jobs, didn't see it in time. So she went a couple days and she was just, I found her face into the dirt, and I'm like, what happened? Like, when was this?
Yeah.
And I check them like almost every day. I leave them alone for the most part because they are private animals and they don't like to be disturbed. Being wild caught, well, they were imports. They weren't freshly wild caught. They'd been with them for a bit,
Hmm.
but we kind of left them alone downstairs in their enclosure, just privacy, let them acclimate, and I guess they were comfortable enough to procreate. And then, yeah, a couple months later, February, right before the eggs hatched, actually, is when she passed. So it was kind of heartbreaking. And then seeing her eggs hatch and them all thrive was actually a nice touch to see her legacy live on.
Yeah.
And as far as the babies go, uh, I'm not sure if color is like indicative of gender at this age,
I don't think
but
it does.
maybe not. There's
Mhm.
like a significant amount of them. There's like showing like beautiful greens, and then there's a couple that were showing like these like little mottled brown patterns like you would find on like a bird,
Yeah.
little baby bird just hiding.
Fascinating. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
We're chatting with other mountain horn dragon keepers, like shout out Responsible Reptiles and JF Beauregard Reptiles. Um, uh, it seems the Natalia, once they start showing colors, it's kind of like a sexable thing. You can tell the males start showing the colors
okay.
earlier, whatever.
And they're a
Um,
lot more vibrant too. Those
they
ones, they
they
have like
are the
more
reds and the
color to them
yellows
than
and the
the adults.
oranges and all that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But the capra, so I've only ever raised three from like they were like this big. I didn't hatch them myself, but I bought them super young,
Yeah.
and I had that same train of thought with them growing up. Like, oh, that one's super green, this one isn't. I wonder, blah blah, and all three turned out to be male. Now it could just be
Okay.
luck. But I also, yeah, I don't know if color necessarily indicates that. Um,
Yeah, I'm not sure because I
yeah,
noticed some males or some babies were like bright green right off the get go, and then
yeah,
others slowly developed into it.
yeah,
But I have one that's like, she's like this big, but she's like brown,
yeah.
all brown, but
All brown.
she's a good eater, so she's like ginormous compared to the rest of the
That's
babies.
awesome. Yeah.
So it's like,
And
okay, it's like, we'll hold this one back and hopes it's a female, but we'll see.
fingers
If nothing
crossed.
else, it's captive bred at this point. It's not
Yeah.
true captive bred because it's from wild caught parents, but it's the first step.
Yeah. That's
And
why when I
hopefully,
saw, sorry to interrupt, but that's why when I
no
saw
good.
you start posting about them, I immediately reached out. I was like, are there any females? Where are you located? Can I get my hands on some? I was like, if they're captive bred babies, like that's, it's
Yeah,
just, that's all we need right now. Or at least, captive, yeah, captive born,
the
captive
more the
bred, whatever it
merrier.
is. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. You
I
need to get
did
that
give
established, that line.
5 to Cody Joe there at the Red Deer Reptile Shop.
Awesome.
I love popping down there just to visit and see
Yeah.
all the animals and stuff he has. So it's like, hey, I have some
Yeah.
babies. Do you want some babies?
Yeah.
Because
So
he
if
was
anyone
really,
listening in the area is looking for captive bred baby mountain horn dragons, that's where you can go to find them.
Cody has them.
Yeah, there
I
you
kept
go.
back 2.
Okay,
There's only
cool.
2 I could keep.
That's awesome. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so they were born in February
Yeah.
this year.
Yes. They hatched
Okay, or
February this year.
hatched, I guess. Yeah. Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
And how did you find the speed of growth? I know that's kind of like I don't know what you compare it
How
to,
would
but
you
like
gauge it?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I would actually kind of compare it to the frilled lizards we work with, because the first month or month and a half, like they're these little tiny
Mhm.
neonates, little tiny babies.
Yeah.
Um, and they feel like they're stunted forever until they finally start eating, finally start growing, and then they hit a growth spurt, and then they're huge. Before you realize it, they're
Just suddenly.
big babies.
Yeah.
And for the first like month or so, they're taking like maybe like 3 week crickets. They could probably take a 5 week if they're really ferocious, but some of them are actually quite timid and they're not really willing to compete with the other babies. We did keep them all together. Um, so after they're all confidently eating, then you up the size of the prey just so they have more to get nourishment from. But of course, the one that did really well, like the baby I kept back, she's like immediately eating everything, anything she can get her mouth on. Like it's so cute to actually watch them stalk their prey.
I'm
They're
sure.
sitting up in their tree and they're like, oh, there's something down there. And then they'll
And
run down their scuttle real fast and they'll go and pick it up.
and you can almost watch the eye kind of like
Yeah.
follow the bug while they're
Yeah.
on the tree, and then they go, "Yeah, I'm going for that."
You'll see them kind of like look at you and they look down. It's like, okay, I'm gonna go for it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're not
just
scary.
sitting
I'll
there.
go. Yeah.
You're not that scary right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Okay, so yeah, so the reason I asked that, do you know roughly how many grams they're at?
I
Do
didn't
you?
weigh them.
Okay.
But if I had to like guess,
Yeah.
maybe 10, somewhere around there. Like they're
Okay.
not super heavy,
Yeah.
but they are decently well built for their size.
Yeah.
I kind of would liken to it like a baby crested gecko.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. So
They're
I have.
agiles. Sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
and no, and they look in the pictures you sent me as well. Like they do look kind of like big, like hefty. Like they look tough. I have one
Yeah.
baby. It's a baby armata, not a baby capra.
Okay.
And it's a year, just over a year old. And so that's why I asked this question in the first place. I'm trying to gauge
Yeah.
like size difference, but it's just over a year old and it's still at 8 grams.
Oh.
Yeah, so they grow. It must be like that they grow super slow
Yeah.
or something. It has the horn. It's starting to grow its horns and everything, and you can see it
They
kind of
have like tiny
growing the
horns.
longer. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Little
So
nubs.
it's yeah, little nubs exactly. So it's interesting, but I don't know if it's just a species that grows slower than a capra, or
It's possible.
if I'm doing something wrong. You mentioned
It,
you raised them together. Do you think
yeah.
that the competition and raising them together was actually more beneficial for them than raising them on their own?
So for our field lizards, I've kind of seen it both ways. So I've seen if they're raised alone, if they don't see someone else going for that prey, they're like, well, what do I do with it? So the hope was raising them together that they would see the others going for that meal and be like, hey, that's actually intended for me to eat.
I gotta go
And they
right
would be
now.
excited for it. So it's monkey see, monkey do kind of thing.
Hmm.
I've had some babies be like really timid and shy and not want to eat at all until they see others going for it. It's like, oh, wait a second. I can get that.
Yeah.
I can go. So I'll try and sprinkle the crickets when we feed them, like over here, over there, access for all of them in different areas. And then ones closest to those babies, they'll jump down real quick. They'll grab one. But I do think that the group setting helped in a bit to stimulate eating really right away. But in other cases, once they get confident enough, it probably would be a good idea to, if you have the space, to separate them so they can grow individually and they can grow at a more regulated speed, I suppose. Because I think it is a little bit indicative of how frequently they're eating, how much they're eating, is how fast they grow. For some cases, I have some babies in there that are still kind of small, and I have other babies that are really big. So I know the big ones are eating really well, or they're finishing up all the scraps that no one else wants.
Yeah.
And maybe it's out competing the others. Preferably in the future, when I have like this a bigger setup to set them up individually, I like to start them first, maybe like the first month together, and then separate and see how they do, so I can regulate who's getting what, seeing who's eating, and who needs more care. But so far, it's been actually good for them.
I would assume the same thing. I obviously I only had the one baby. I started off with 6, and unfortunately within the first like month or so, the 5 of them dropped off, and I just had the one. But I think that this baby would have been growing faster and better off had it been in a group setting instead of alone. And again, I've never been able
It's
to, like,
hard
I've
to
never done it,
calculate
but yeah,
though.
exactly. But it's just an assumption I have. Let's take a jump to the setups. How do you have your adults set up, and then how do you have the baby set up? Are you replicating it, temperatures, all that kind of stuff?
So our adults are our adults were set up initially upstairs where it was warmer, but we found that they were hanging out near the bottom of the enclosure. They didn't really like it. Our upstairs, like our rooms, because of all the lights and fixtures, is kind of sitting around like the 80, 82 mark. So we moved it downstairs, give them a little bit more privacy. It was sitting around more like the 75, 78 kind of degrees Fahrenheit rather. And
Not 78 degrees.
no, not
Or
Celsius.
Celsius, yeah.
Sorry. I know Canadian, we technically use Celsius, but
Yeah.
with my reptiles, I find it, I don't know why, easier to use the Fahrenheit for
Yeah, no, that's
temperatures.
fair. It's because all the care guides are
They
in
are.
Fahrenheit. Yeah,
So I just
78
kind of
is about
adapted
25,
that.
I think.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. So they're set up downstairs, the adults were, and we built an enclosure, just plywood,
Awesome.
one by ones. And so it's just a big arboreal enclosure for them. And we sealed it with, what was that? It's like it's a wood sealer.
Yeah. The animal safe wood sealer. Do your own
Yes.
research.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can like the brand and stuff that we use. You just have to make sure that it's completely dry, has time to air out. You do it outside in your garage or somewhere well ventilated that's not in the fumes are not in the proximity of your animals. So once that was all set up, they are actually able to grip onto the plywood pieces of the board. So it added more climbing area.
Yeah.
We wanted to do like a full foam background, but just didn't get a chance to. And then they have vertical trees we gathered that were already not quite dead, but dead standing without being completely rotten. You don't want rotting wood.
For sure.
But you don't want the green one either, because that one's going to rot, and that's going to invite fungus gnats, which is every keeper's bane. Fungus gnats.
I hate them so much.
Oh my god, I find them in everything now, and I'm trying to go to sleep, and I have my phone out, and they're like, ugh.
Yeah. I just saw one pass by me right now in front of the camera. I saw it on the camera, not even.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we have vertical sticks, we have horizontal or slightly leaned ones. I wanted to add more perches and stuff that are more horizontal, so they're not using so much energy to sit, so they're not hanging all the time. And then we have like a little basking fixture, maybe like a 50-watt bulb, just something small so he can get up close, he can be warm if he needs to, and then get down low and escape if he needs. And we had a mixture of play sand, potting soil, and then I think it was cocoa fiber in there, just for like some extra volume and some humidity retention. So they have a front door that's like well screened, so it's lots of ventilation, kind of like you would keep a chameleon, honestly. Like lots of ventilation, as much humidity as you can get naturally without it being stagnant. And then a misting system actually really helps, because they will see the water, they will see it dripping on the leaves, and a basin, a water bowl. Even if you just have I have a Tupperware lid set up for the babies that I like drip the water onto, they will see the water agitated, and they will go down to drink. I think a couple keepers and stuff online keep like what's it called? Aquarium, kind of like a big swimming area for theirs, water feature.
That's what I do. Yeah.
And I know they really love water.
Yes.
I'm anxious of mine not being able to get out, being silly, and drowning themselves. So I don't have anything quite that deep, but I do have big enough containers or water bowls that they can fully stand in and submerge if necessary, kind of lay down in if they really want to, or the male will sometimes run down his trees and just face plant into the water bowl and just.
Yes.
It looks like he's waterboarding himself. It's so bad. It's like, please stop.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
my
then,
males
yeah,
climb up to the top of their enclosure and then jump into the water, sit there for a couple of seconds, then
gosh.
climb back up and jump back in. It's almost like they're playing.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
The water dragons actually do that. They're
Do
like
they? Yeah.
pigeons.
That's
They
awesome.
will just play in the water. She makes the mess, the female. I was like, stop.
I have to clean this. Please stop.
I just cleaned this. And then, yeah, for the babies, mountain horns, I wanted to do like a vertical setup, like a standing terrarium. At the time, we had a large, I don't know if It's a big, large tub. It's kind of what you would pack like your belongings in, but it's like see-through, so I can see into it. And we have a portion that is screen on the top, like we populated some screen, and the UVB sits above that, so they have their UVB light. And they sat in our upstairs living room, so it was a little bit warmer, but they seem to be all right with that, a little slightly warmer for them. And then the UVB bulb, so they have an ambient of like 80 degrees, and then their UVB, which they can leave and come under if they want to. And the humidity seemed to like be okay for them. I do aerate it like once or twice a day when I spray them down. I was like, give it a good little air exchange.
Okay, yeah.
Just make sure they're not like moldy or too much humidity. Too much humidity, of course, leads to fungus and mold, and you don't want that for them.
Sure.
But the babies are surprisingly actually fairly hardy the way we have them set up. I don't know if it's strictly luck or if we did something right. I don't know if I replicated it, if I would get the same results, so it's not proven. Yeah. So I don't know that it's like, hey, yeah, go do this, but that's how we have them set up. And they've been good so far. The babies eat and just like maybe runt, but they all eat.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
are you feeding them every day?
I feed them every second day.
Every second day, okay.
Only because in the past for other babies and stuff, if you have uneaten crickets and they sit for too long and they're hiding, they're elusive. We all know crickets hide.
Yes.
Hate them.
Yes.
They're in my house. I've had crickets actually get to the point where they've tried to eat the babies. So it's like only as much as they can eat. I don't want to over deposit it crickets, but I always try to make sure that everyone has some. It's been trying to find like a balance. If the babies are not particularly interested rather, and they're not going for them, I know I put fewer in. That way there's none like, I don't know, if you get like those fake plants and they have like the different layers and stuff between the leaves, the crickets hide right in there.
Absolutely.
Right where the babies can't see them. So I'm always in there like shaking the bushes. It's like, hey, get out. Go get eaten. Here's some lettuce. Like, go for the lettuce so the babies can see you.
That's actually a smart idea. That's a smart idea, leaving a little piece.
A little piece of bait for the crickets. Yeah.
Bananas and the fruit flies will all go to them. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the dark frogs.
Yeah, I also wonder how good the mountain horned dragons, not the dark frogs. I wonder how good their eyes are, because I've seen instances where the cricket will sit right next to the mountain horned dragon for like 5-10 minutes, and there will be no movement from either. And then the cricket moves, and the dragon goes, "Oh, there's food right next to me," and then it goes for it. So
I think it's a battle of the wills, because I have a couple species that do that. They will sit there for as long as that cricket is sitting there. We have a helmeted iguana. And she will wait it out. She will wait it out until it wiggles first. And she's like, it's up. I got you.
I win.
I win. I'm the better statue. It's funny. My boyfriend's Instagram is called Living Sticks, because all his choice pets that he really loves, they just sit there like a stick all day.
Yeah.
They just hide.
That's
I think it's a battle of the wills for a lot of those, because we had a Indonesian forest dragon as well. Loved her so much, but she ended up getting a fungal infection. It was, when we got the results back, it was like foreign to Canada. So it came in with her from the import, I guess. But she
was the struggles of wild caught.
She was supposedly captive bred, and we got her as like a tiny baby. So I'm not 100% sure if it was something just that came in with them. That was maybe from their environment where they were kept, exposure to other animals perhaps. But it waited until she was like a sub-adult to finally take over her system. Otherwise, she was growing normally. But yeah, they'll sit there like a little stick. And the helmeted iguanas as well, like they'll sit there so long they can grow mold on them in the wild and moss. So the worm wiggles, they're like, Kate, I win.
Now I get it.
I got you.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So
so go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, for some of the cryptic species like our anoles, the helmet iguana, mountain horns, will often leave like the adults like a little bowl of worms, super worms and stuff. And I'll kind of leave like a counted amount so I know what he's eating, what they're getting. And they'll see there and it's like, hey, yeah, there's food down there. They'll run down, they'll finish the whole bowl, and they run back up and they just hide again. But yeah.
That's the helmeted iguana?
Helmet
or
iguanas, the anoles do the same thing, and
Okay.
then the male English. Mountain horn dragon will do
there
the
you
same.
go. That's awesome. Okay, I was actually about to ask this question: is crickets the only thing you're feeding the babies, or are you also giving them like mealworms in a cup or anything like that?
Currently, just crickets for the babies.
Okay.
When they're smaller, I worry about giving them too big a prey that it like terrorizes them, kind of thing. Because I've had frilled lizards in the past that like, oh my god, like this worm attacked me. I can't eat it again,
Yes.
and they will just stop eating. So it's like, okay, stuff they can overpower easily, and then as they get bigger and get more confident, then up their prey size. The Gastrophilus pristina, like the green keel bellies, they don't care. They're
They don't care.
gluttons. They'll attack everything.
Yeah, I've
I have
noticed.
juveniles the same size as a superworm. Try and take a superworm. So
And
they just like,
they'll cut it up. Yeah.
oh, they will. And then if one is struggling, one runs over, is like, hey, I'll help, and they grab the other end. I know they're just fighting over the food, but it's still funny to see them team up on it and just shred it, I guess. It's like,
They're helping. They're helping.
They're helping, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. My emerald tree skinks, the pair will do the same thing. They'll fight over food.
Yeah.
Even if there's like barely any food hanging out of the female's mouth, the male will come over and be like,
Yeah.
I'll take that.
It's a
Yeah.
battle of the wills to see how fast I can get the worms to them before they grab each other's worm. It's like, hey, here's yours. Hey, here's yours. They're like, oh yeah, I'll take that. It's
Yeah.
like, don't take theirs. That's theirs.
I put up
But yeah.
a reel on my Instagram like a week or so ago, and I was feeding my male mountain horn dragons hornworms.
The hornworms, yeah,
And, yeah, and
I love
yeah,
it.
and they start jumping over each other and pushing each other out
Yeah.
of the way for it, and it's just
Fighting
so
for
funny
it.
because they don't react like that to anything but hornworms. So it's fascinating that they do have
It's-
food preference almost.
It's
Yeah.
vibrant. It's wiggling. And it's like,
Yeah.
give it to me.
Yes. I
The
need this
superworms
now.
will kind of sit there like, we can have like certain species of roaches and stuff here for illegal feeders, like the discoids
Yes.
now.
Yes.
But even the discoids will play dead.
Yes.
Kind of like a
They'll move their
cricket.
hands a little bit and then stop.
Their little antennas will go, and then they'll just sit there like I'm just a rock. And the lizard will wait it out. And sometimes they get bored. But for the most part, like they start moving again. It's like, oh, got you.
Yeah.
I always
No,
love
it's-
that part,
it's-
actually. You put them in
Yeah,
a little
for
bowl and
sure.
they all start scuttling around the corners. And then the animals are just so excited about it. It's like, oh, movement.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think that most of them are kind of like cats. People are like, what's the personality of them? It's like, they're kind of like cats. They choose
that's-
you.
Yeah, that makes sense. They choose you, absolutely. Yeah.
They
You
choose
can have a reptile for years, and if it does not like you, it does not like you. Yeah.
I have a couple like that, but it's okay. We
The-
enjoy the spicy as
The
well.
spicy
as the
ones.
friendly.
Exactly. Absolutely. Do you try to tongue feed the dragons, or is it or do you just bowl feed them?
Every so often, I'll try and like see if they take the tongs. It's a little bit more scary for them because all of a sudden there's this shiny thing to it.
Yes.
Some of the babies, they're like, yeah, right away they'll take. I have wall lizards and stuff that don't care. They'll like take everything. And then some of the frilled dragon babies would be like, oh my god, no. And the mountain horns are kind of similar to the frills as much as I like come to realize the behaviors and stuff. I don't know if it's like just the tree agamid species,
Mm-hmm.
if it's something similar and just how they live. It's very cryptic. They're ambush predators. If there's something foreign and scary, it's like all of a sudden like they're dewlapping you. They're open mouth hissing. It's like, what is that?
Yeah.
And they'll run away.
Coming too close to me.
So for the most part, like don't get too close.
Mhm.
I've had a couple babies. The bigger, more bolder ones take from the tongs, but for the most part, I just let them figure out for themselves like what they want to track down in the enclosure.
Yeah. That's awesome. And then I don't want to steal your secrets, but what about the egg the egg incubation process? What did you put the eggs on? You already sort of mentioned the temperatures, but if you could run again through the temperatures you kept them at and all that stuff.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
So it was, I had the eggs and it was quick research. So it's like, okay, well, I have vermiculite on hand. So I mixed up a fresh batch and your 1:1 ratio. I find that too much. Like I find it really soggy. So I do like 1/2 to 1,
Mhm.
half part water to 1 part vermiculite. You want it damp, but you don't want it soggy or super wet. kind of like moist soil. Like moist soil would also probably work if they were left in the dirt. So I set them up in I have like these takeout containers
Yeah.
from like eating
That's
out.
what I used to, for sure.
You leave the little holes in there, and you like pop like maybe three holes, and you close one as you need to regulate the humidity escaping. I didn't try to disturb the eggs too much, but I did kind of peek in there like once a week to be like, where are we at? We good? How's the humidity? Do I need water to this? Or is it still humid enough? Is it still moist enough? But yeah, it was kind of figuring it out on the go, but for the most part, just a steady humidity for them. I don't know if I didn't really measure the humidity. That's the only thing. Like I don't have like a proper like little gauge in there. I just have a gauge in there to measure temperature. So it was sitting around the 80, 75 kind of range. And yeah, just moist.
You said it took about 120 days at that temperature?
When I went back and counted the days manually, just to be sure, when you'd asked, it's like, how long did that actually take? Because it was 4 months, but it wasn't like 4 months to the date.
Yeah.
They were laid on like the 26th of something October, and then they hatched on like the 20th or the 11th. I'd have to double check. I think it's the 20th of February. So it's like, okay, it's give or take over 100 days.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you would get faster incubation times from higher temperatures. It's probably not recommended. Slower, lower temps is usually better for them. Or I've found, at least for any of the babies and stuff that we're raising, like the Pristina can take hot temps and hatch within 60 days and still be fine. Like they're super resilient. But something like the frilled lizards, they really need that constant temperature from the eggs that we have incubated and had success with. Any serious drops or fluctuations, they don't like. And the mountain horns, I guess so far we're kind of similar, but I only had the one clutch, so I don't know if it was a freak accident or if that was I did the right thing.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I currently have some eggs I'm incubating at. Hold on, let me quickly do a conversion here because it's significantly colder than what you're keeping. Yeah, okay. So I'm currently incubating mountain horn dragon eggs at like 63, 64.
Okay.
And we're over 7 months now, and the eggs look like they're growing, but
Yeah.
I don't know. Did you ever try to candle yours in the process?
Initially, yes, because when she deposited them, some of them kind of rolled, so I needed to know where the embryo was to place them upside right. So I was able to candle them, but I only had like the light
Phone,
off
yeah,
my
yeah,
phone.
that's what I used to. Yeah. And
I
you
want to
kept the
get one of those little
embryos
powerful
up?
torches. Their eggs were like quite dirty, so it was a little bit of hit and miss. So I just trying to go like the darkest circle for the embryo to the top, and I guess I got them all right because they all hatched. I was like, okay,
Yeah.
it's like,
Or it
this is
doesn't
kinda how
matter.
I found it. I'm not sure if it matters.
Yeah,
I've
that's
had
interesting.
the Pristina eggs. Like she always glues hers to the inside of the incubation tub that I give her, like lay nest technically, and so it's just pop it off the plastic and put it in the vermiculite, and they all just sit glued together and they hatch just fine.
You can remove it off the surface of whatever she lays them on, and they don't crack.
Because I'm using like a Tupperware container filled with like sphagnum moss.
Okay.
And that's like the most dark, humidest spot in her enclosure. My Pristina, she reliably goes in there always.
But she sticks it to the plastic.
She will stick it to the plastic, yes, and then I can just push the plastic a little bit and they pop right off. I usually find it like the next day or the day of if I'm lucky. Eggs that I find like a couple days later, still fairly easy to come off. I don't try and separate the eggs whatsoever because I don't want to tear them. I suppose you could if it was still early enough, but I don't find a point because they help regulate the temperature to each other. If this one has not enough heat, the top one's going to kind of regulate it to it eventually, and they all hatch together. For mountain horns and the frillies, where their eggs aren't sticking together, there's no binding; they're just free laid. That's a little bit harder to replicate, and you also don't want them like too huddled together because the eggs need room to grow. They do grow significantly as they progress through the incubation process. Like the frillies will start from like this little tiny, I don't know, like marble into like biggie eggs, like ginormous.
Yeah.
And then by the time the babies hatch, like this full little replica of the adult almost, except for the frill. Like the frills are so tiny.
And almost like compressed, right? Until they open
Yeah,
up. Yeah, I've
yeah.
seen that. Yeah, that's adorable.
The babies surprisingly actually don't frill us all as much as like other people's adults do. Like ours have always been like really chill. I don't know if it's breeding, if it's the temperament passed on to from the parents. That's been something I've been experimenting a little bit with
Yeah.
my animals. Like I have a pair of the Presinas that are like really calm. Does that transfer the babies? I've had like maybe 1 or 2 babies that are super spicy and like want nothing to do with me. But the rest of them is like I can free handle them a little bit and hand over hand, and they'll just hang out. It was like, okay, time to go back in and just pluck them up, put them back in.
That's awesome. And do
Yeah.
you have a pair of angry Persina you can compare that to?
No.
That's your next move.
I got, thankfully, captive bred as my first pair of Pristina. So I got them as tinier babies with like really long tails, but I let them settle in, and then they were living on a desk right next to my computer in the apartment. So for the first like 6 or so months that I had them, they were always kind of close to me. So they got used to my presence. And then after a couple months in, I would put my hand in there. It's like, hey, do you want to come out? Like, do you want to interact? And they would run away. They'd let you know. If you had food, you could lure them out. And now they're just like, let me out. What are you doing out there? Like, let me out of my enclosure. Like, I want to hang out. It's like, okay. Open the door. She jumps out. She sits there. She's like, okay, let's go. It's like, okay, we're going to go watch some TV then. And she's like, okay, I sit with you.
That's awesome. Yeah.
She's like, I'm bored now. I'm going to go investigate that plant. I was like, okay, cool. Go check out that pothos.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I'm still too scared to do that with the little baby I have. So
They're really fast.
Yeah, exactly. That's the problem, especially compared to mountain horn dragons, where I'm like, yeah, sit on my floor. I'll come back in 3 hours, and you're still sitting on my floor. Cool. Yeah, I'm sure
the opposite for me. Actually, the mountain horns are actually really skittish.
Are they okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're gone. It's like a little race car. It's like, how fast can that thing go? It's like 0 to 100 in 0.5 seconds.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting to hear. Actually, yeah, mine are like, I'll leave the paludarium with my males. I'll leave it open.
Yeah.
And I'll kind of just hang around the room and do stuff. Eventually, one of them will be like, "All right, I'll come for a shot," and he'll jump out, sit on the floor, and they barely like if they decide to like run up the arm of the couch and sit there. But other than that, I've never seen them go fast, so that's cool to hear that they can run.
They can run.
That's fascinating.
Think basilisk lizard, but not as fast.
Do they go up on 2 legs? No.
The frillies do.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah.
I think the mountain horns do a little bit if they had enough runway.
Enough speed. Yeah.
They had enough runway and they weren't hindered by like our linoleum or vinyl flooring. If it was carpet, oh my god, they'd be gone. It was always fun when the frilled lizards growing them, when they would get out and they just run like 2-legged across the living room.
That must be so cool to see.
God, it's the funniest thing to see because they look so derpy. You realize they're in fear and they're panic running, but they're like so freaking derpy.
With their hands like on the side, yeah.
Yeah, it's like little crocodile.
That's so cool.
I love it.
Yeah.
How many? Me so much joy.
Yeah, I'm sure. All of these reptiles do, right? Like that's why we do this. That's
100%.
Absolutely. Yeah. How many? You said you kept 2 and you gave 5 to Cody. So was the whole clutch 7 eggs then?
Yes. So it was 7 eggs, and then all 7 of them did hatch, and all 7 of them ate and are thriving right now. They do have like little moods and stuff. So when I brought them back upstairs, because we had that awful heat wave, it was so hot. I put them downstairs just because it's cooler for them. They were kind of moody though when I moved them back up. So they're all like dark and kind of like how crested geckos and some snakes fire up, fire down. Yeah.
Absolutely,
they will definitely do that with mood, and it's kind of a good indication of, are they happy in their environment, or are they happy with you? Is something off?
You think that the temperature is a mood thing?
I think the temperature and the humidity definitely affects their colors and stuff, but I think their mood also affects their colors as well, because I've seen them like get used to me. Like I brought the babies upstairs and I was picking up the 5 for Cody. And I have them all in this little tub, and they're stressed. They're like, what happened? All of a sudden we're out on the kitchen table and we're not over here. Like, this is really bright.
Yeah.
Pick them up. It's like, hey, it's okay. Like, you're fine. Just chill out for a second. And you could progressively see them within like 5-10 minutes brighten up again, and all that dull, dark, black coloring just kind of like left. And some of them misfired. So they had like little pockets of green and white speckling on their backs. It was actually kind of cool to see.
Cool.
It's like, if you look like this like 24/7, this is actually kind of cool colors.
Can you see like this, please?
Yeah. And then, of course, the car ride, 2 Codys, like, they were nice and warm. They weren't freaking out. So by the time we brought them to him, like, they were all fired up and they were all beautiful colors. And like, hey, like, what's this? Like, where are we going? And he put them straight away into their enclosure. And they're just, oh, what is this? He had a beautiful, beautiful little setup for the baby. So it was nice to see.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. It is interesting to think of like I may have said temperature earlier. I meant the color change being a mood thing, or like they're super stressed, so they're going like dark black, almost like camouflage better. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting for sure.
I think the lighting also affects it too. Like, if it's a dark kind of environment, like if we had to turn off the lights a couple days there because it was like 35 degrees outside Celsius and it was really hot. So it's like, okay, I cannot afford anyone getting heat stroke. I can handle cool temperatures in the house, but I can't handle overheating everyone.
For sure.
So some of the lamps and stuff did go off just until we can find something like a little bit more eco-friendly, a little bit more less heat producing UVB. And everyone's like dark, they're moody, even the frillies are pouting. They like it hot. They're like, what are we doing? Like, I'm sad. It's like, I'm sorry. The Euromastic, she's sitting there, she's like, where's my basking bulb? What did you do to it? It's like, I'm sorry. Your basking bulb was like 120.
It's like, you don't need it.
Too hot.
You don't need it right now. Yeah.
Don't worry, you'll have it back when it cools off this week.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were kind of duller in colors, but as soon as they hit the sunlight, and it wasn't hot, but they still had like that natural UVB. They're like, oh, this isn't bad. This is good.
Yeah.
And they brightened up.
Yeah. So interesting. They're such a cool species. I'm so glad that you were able to produce some
Yeah, I'm
babies.
excited.
Yeah.
I'm hoping we still get luck, and hopefully the 2 that I kept back as a male and female. If it's both males, then it's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll find another female eventually. Like, I still have their father, which is originally a wild caught. So if I had another imported female that was brought in, I'd be more confident putting her with him rather than the captive bred boys, just because I wouldn't want any diseases or anything she brought in parasite load to be transferred over.
For sure.
It'd be a little bit easier to regulate bloodlines and everything too. Like, if wild caught, and then those pairs to the other pairs, and hopefully get some females. I don't know if temperature is,
I don't know either.
incubation temperature is indicating of gender. That's to be decided, I guess, because if the green and the brown doesn't mean it's male and female, then we're all just kind of shooting in the dark. I suppose you could try and candle the base of their tails like you can like bearded dragons and stuff. You'd need like a really powerful light to do so. My phone light is not powerful enough.
According to Responsible Reptile, you can. At least with lepidogasters, they were successful in doing it, I believe.
That's good to know. Like, they're still babies right now, so I could probably still try it.
Probably try it, yeah.
The older they get, especially with the frill lizards, there was a certain point once their colors kind of solidified and they were what they're supposed to look like, you couldn't tell from the base of their tail. Like, good luck.
Yeah.
So for the frillies, we had to go off of the obvious like head shapes and frill size based on the parents and stuff that we have, because our female frilly looks much different than our male. Her nose is shorter, her head's a little bit wider, but he has like this big long frill that goes to his shoulders, whereas hers like goes right above.
Yeah.
So as they mature, it is a little bit easier. Like, okay, you have this, you have that.
Yeah, and they don't have like with the mountain, like adult mountain horned dragons, you can sex through the tail, right? You can't do that with the.
You can possibly, but maybe within like the first 3 to 4 months. But they're really wiggly.
Oh wait, you can only sex them from the first 3 or 4 months. When they're adults, it doesn't. There's no difference in the tail.
Well, the males kind of have like obvious like bulges where the hemipenes are.
Yeah.
on near the base, but that's when you have like an absolutely like mature male.
Yes. Okay.
Otherwise, when they're juveniles, telling by the tail is like really hard.
Yes.
So we had to go a little bit more off of like their overall features.
That makes
And
sense.
even that wasn't an exact science. So people was like, oh, do you have males? Do you have females? It's like, well, we have like what's suspected as, but I'm not going to guarantee it because it could be wrong. It could be a lady boy.
Yeah, you never know.
It could be a boy that just looks feminine
Doesn't
until
show.
he grows into his frill.
Yeah, it happens a lot of fish too. You
Yeah.
have a female that'll look like almost like a male, or males that are like
Yeah.
sleeper males that haven't
Yeah.
truly showed the colors yet. Absolutely, yeah.
My favorite was learning about like these lizards. I think they're native to Utah, where Clint's reptiles, and you have like the males that look like females, and you have the males that look like males, and they confuse each other. And they fight for the females, but it is like, hey, like I'm just another female. Just kidding. I
I'm
got
a
your
male.
girl.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's interesting. Yeah, it's a good tactic.
Yeah, exactly.
I think there's a
Sneaky.
species of bird that does the same thing,
Probably.
where it's like all the males are competing, and then the male that looks like the female will sneak in, mate with the female, and get out before the males actually pay attention, or the males that look like males pay attention. And don't quote me on any of this. This is just I remember reading it somewhere. But yeah, that's animals can do some pretty interesting stuff.
Animals are cheeky. They're
Yeah.
cheeky.
Yeah.
I love it.
When you had the pairs, did you leave the pair together at all times? When you had the female, sorry.
For the mountain horns?
Yes.
Yeah, we left them in together just to make sure that they're cohabiting well. I've had instances of other animals and stuff, like when you separate them and you go to reintroduce,
No
unless
problems with
you
that.
change the environment and you revamp it, add new scents, rearrange the branches even, they will still see it as their territory. And she's coming into their territory, and maybe some males are receptive to that. I've had the male Pristina not be. He's been like, this is mine, get out, I will bite you. So the mountain horns, we kind of kept them together just so it's like an established territory together. They both went in at the same time. If we had to separate her out, we would have to redecorate to put her back in. And they thrived together just fine. They left each other alone for the most part. They would compete for food occasionally, but for the most part, they would go for like their separate corners to hunt. If you threw the crickets and the super worms are in the bowl, like near the bottom, they both jump down and like go hunt individually. And then they come around, it's like, oh, hey, like that's mine. Like, no, I want it. But for the most part, they lived actually quite harmoniously. We've actually found the same too for like our Cuban nightingales. People always say like don't keep the male and female together, but he doesn't bother her. She was actually the bully when we first introduced them. She was also quite bigger, but they live actually really well together, and I think they're breeding. They bred for us before, but right now she just looks really pudgy, and she won't lay. So I am hoping she's just extra chunky from all the worms and stuff we've been giving her. He's like, please lay. It's like, I want some babies.
It's always so stressful when they look really big and they haven't laid, and you're like, you're past due. Just drop your eggs.
Yeah, is this like fat lumps?
Yeah.
Or
are those
do I need to be concerned?
Mm-hmm.
Are we okay?
Yeah. No, it's super interesting. Yeah. I have for capras specifically, I have 3 males and then I have 3 females, but I have them all separated. And all the other keepers seem to be keeping their mountain horn dragons in groups or colonies or whatever it is. So I just put the females in yesterday. Actually, I put 2 of the females in with 2 of the males, so now there are 4 of them living together. And yeah, exactly. My fingers are crossed. I don't know how long it takes. I don't know what the gestation period is or any of that stuff. But my fingers are crossed.
I can't remember I think I might have noticed when she started to look like quite round.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I've heard. I would be willing to bet that it was longer than October to August or August to October.
Possibly
because
a
I've heard
couple
people
months
say
gestation.
like 4 or 5 months, somewhere around that. So you may be even lucky to like that the male you have may not even be the father, which means you still have
which is also
fresh
possible.
blood. Yeah. It's interesting for sure.
Because I don't know if maybe like if he did breed with her, if it was a mixture of his and maybe a previous male's
I wonder if that's
Sperm,
possible. That's interesting.
I've heard like snakes can sometimes retain it, so
Mm.
I don't know if lizards can as well. I think people say like jewel lizards and stuff generally don't. Um, but yeah, now that I think of it, I'm pretty sure I did recognize like she was getting quite round in her waist area,
Yeah.
and my best comparison would be like our field lizards because we had them breeding before we had anything else. Um, Very much so frilly, like really wide body, belly. She looks really heavy. And then right before they go to lay, like you'll really see like their hip bones and stuff be kind of like pronounced. No matter how much food we'd give the frill lizard, like she would always look that way right before she laid. She looked like you were abusing her. She looked like she was dehydrated. It's like, are you okay? And then she dropped her eggs and it's like, oh, right.
Yeah, that makes
This is
sense.
how you always look.
This is what, yeah.
And she won't eat right away. When she lays the eggs, I'll usually catch her when she lays. And I was like, okay, just kind of waiting over in the side, waiting her to finish, give her a couple hours, come back. She's trying to bury them. And it's okay. This part is actually kind of funny because people's like, oh, be gentle with the eggs. Don't roll them.
Yeah.
There's this mother frill lizard smashing the eggs with her face,
15 videos.
smearing
Yeah.
them into the dirt, covering them. I was like, okay, like I got this. And I kind of shoo her out. I was like, come out of there. And she's like, no, my eggs.
My eggs, yeah.
And she'll fight you off.
defend.
I'll like push her a little bit. It's okay, it's okay. And you try and go in there with food afterwards, like, hey, do you want to eat? Like, you just laid a big clutch of eggs. There's like 7 eggs in here. And she's like, no, I don't want to eat. Get that thing out of here. And she will attack. I'd always try and offer her like pinkies and stuff because they're high in calcium and a little bit higher in fat content.
Yeah.
And she would smash this pinky into the dirt every time right after laying. She's like, I don't want your food.
Yeah.
I want my eggs.
That's
like,
very interesting.
Give her a day or so to like calm down. And it's like, okay, I'll go back in. It's like, do you want to eat now? And she's like, yes. And she will pound all of the food back. And then she'll look right as rain. And it's like, okay, you're good now.
That's awesome.
But right before they lay, they're going to look like super kind of like dehydrated almost.
Did
like
she stop eating before she laid? Or do they stop eating before they? Okay. Is there a good amount of period, a good amount of time?
At least a week or 3 days leading up to it. It was one of the two. She'll start digging around and they're obsessed with the digging. They're finding that perfect spot. So if you have like a lay bin already preset out and that is the most inviting place, they'll probably right away go for it. Otherwise, they're probe digging like tortoises and stuff will do. Like I see on Ken and Ken's channel. They're always like prodding around for the tortoise nest. Like, hey, where did they go this time? The female mountain horn did that as well. She's like, okay, over here? No. Over here? Not so much. And then she found her favorite spot, but she was digging and she's obsessing over it because she didn't have enough dirt. So I actually had to go in and put more dirt in that area so she felt it was deep enough. So,
do you know roughly how deep it was or how deep it ended up being?
I think I ended up making it a good like 3 to 4 inches deep for her, just so she had that depth to kind of bury into with her whole like half a body, and then she'll turn around, readjust herself, and then she deposit them and she buried them. She didn't get a chance to fully bury them because I did watch her lay the eggs because I was like kind of anxious. I was like, hey, it's time.
Get out of there. Let me collect them.
We're documenting. Yeah. We got this. And then right away after she lays, she kind of like looked at me and she like backs up a little and she scuttles off. It's like, okay, I know, thank you. Take all the eggs out gently. But yeah.
That is so cool. What a cool, What a cool story.
She was a really nice lizard too. So I'm really sad that she passed away shortly. And I don't know if that was due to another clutch of eggs that maybe she did have. The time in between could have very much been like a second clutch that was too hard on her system. Maybe it was on our part pairing too soon and we should have separated, made sure she was good weight. We didn't expect them to breed. We just wanted them to not fight. So just to be cohabiting and be kumbaya in there.
Yeah. Odds are it wasn't that and it wasn't your fault. From what I've heard, it's from one pairing, it's 2 clutches. And like you said, and that's roughly around the same time, this distance between the clutches. So odds are it was just like, like just too weak to lay the second round of clutches, which, it sucks, but I'm finding that seems to be a common thing with them, or at least a common thing with them in captivity.
That's so
And
rough,
yeah,
though.
yeah.
My heart can't take that.
I know. It's very tough going through, especially when like I've ordered several wild caught ones now, and obviously not all of them survive, and it's like,
Right.
is it worth continuing to try to establish the species when there's so much failure in it? And then you go handle one that's like a captive red, and you're like, but this is such an awesome pet, and more people need to be keeping them, and so maybe it is
Yeah.
worth it. It's just such a back and forth. Yeah.
It has its heartbreaks involved, and I think that's true for a lot of reptile keeping, animal keeping in general, when you work with large amount of animals, and you always hope for the best and you always try for the best scenario possible, but there's factors and stuff you can't control. But I think it is worth trying. It's worth um, doing our best to establish them more in captivity so we don't have to take from the wild. Maybe like one or two breeders who are, that's all they work with is the mountain horns, and someone imports some wild caughts as fresh blood, so we don't get any incest or poor bloodlines. Maybe once they're more established, we can look at like, hey, do they have a melanistic version? Is there high color? Like, I don't know. Like, they're beautiful just as is.
They really are.
Natalia, I think you have. They're
No, I
gorgeous.
don't.
Oh no.
Wait, I know. Sorry, I do, but I'm not. Yes,
Okay.
sorry. I do have a pair of them. Yes. I
They
don't know if I'm
have,
gonna be
like,
keeping them long term, but I do. Yeah.
incredible colors, but yeah, if the females are gonna gas out after a couple clutches, would then a person have to like only pair her once and hope that she doesn't clutch anyways? And what if she double clutches anyways and there's slugs and she passes away regardless, and now you have one viable clutch and slugs that they're just gonna pass anyways?
Mhm.
I guess you could feed the slugs to other animals, but long
But
term
no,
that would
genuinely.
be kind of hard.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's one of those things. Is like I always kind of like look and check online. It's like, well, who's working with this and who has that? And it's like, I don't see these. I don't see these captive bred ever offered, except for maybe one fella in Calgary for like Alberta. There's one person who like works with them, and that's it. Like everyone else is like, oh, it's a cool pet. It's like, this is not a throwaway animal. Like,
Yes.
this is a life investment.
Yes.
And I think the more wild imports should be treated more as projects to help cultivate into our herpetoculture and establish a captive presence. Because it's so sad when I hear about like all the animals and stuff that they strip from the forests and the rainforest, and maybe they're down on their luck in some of those countries and they eat them. And it's like, well, look out. Okay, I know humans are like should be more important than animals, but I really love my animals.
Let's pick the right animals.
Yeah. And it makes me really sad to hear that. So it's like, I don't know. There's so many species out there we haven't even documented. There's several. I don't want to get this wrong. There's like the genus of Prasina, the Gastropholis prasina. They have a couple different species in that genus. There is one. I'll send you a couple pictures.
Yeah,
It looks like a wall lizard almost, except it's the size of the green keel bellies. It's brown. It's got some whites on it. It's got like this really awesome speckling. And it's like, why don't I see those?
Nata, is it? Pitata? Oh, I have no idea that all of these. Oh, wow. There's actually a lot of. That is
And
cool.
then there's the green one with like tiger striping, and
Yes.
it literally looks like a mini green tray monitor. And I'm like, oh my god, this is awesome looking. But they're not in captivity, and there's no one exporting them, and it's from Africa. So it's like, how the heck do you get animals from Africa? What exporters do you have to go through? Because there's unfortunately a lot of scams.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't want to be scammed.
Sure. Yeah.
But I would
Just so
love
everyone
to.
kind of gets a look at that. I'm just gonna quickly for the people watching at least. These are the ones with tiger, the echinata or whatever. They're what?
Yeah.
A gorgeous
The
species.
spiny tail Prasinas. Oh, they're so cool. I love.
So cool.
They're amazing looking, and they have like these little yellow throats. And it's like, oh, they kind of make me think of like anoles almost with how vibrant they are.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a couple different species, and it's like, where are those in the hobby? There's a lot of stuff though. It's every so often I'll scroll through. I'm sure you know Ashley from Northern Lights Imports.
Yes, personally, yes.
Yeah, I'll scroll through her list. There's like, I didn't know this existed. What
Yes.
is that? And I'll look up this scientific name. She always posts a scientific, and I actually really appreciate that.
Yes.
Because it's more specific to that animal and not just green grass lizard is like that could be anything. That could be it could be the beautiful tachydromas that Mike works with, or it could be the green grass lizard someone misidentified, the green keel bellies.
Yeah, it could be anything. Absolutely.
So the
Yeah,
scientific name is like so helpful. I was like, oh my god, like I didn't know that was a thing. Where did this come from?
Yes,
Holy-
species you've never even heard of are on that list.
Yeah, I'm like 4 years into this hobby, and I was like, where did you come from? This
How have I never
thing.
heard of you before?
Right.
Yeah,
How
yeah.
I never know about this.
I got my Acanthosaura armata from Ashley as well, and they're all doing
Awesome.
great. And yeah,
I love
shout out
that.
Northern Lights. She Reptile Imports. If you guys are looking for something important to Canada, she is definitely the right person to speak
100%. If you want reliable, if you want beautiful, gorgeous animals, and she takes care of them actually really well.
to. Yes.
And she has her whole house or a good portion of her house set up to this facility that she runs. From the pictures and stuff that I've seen, like it looks top notch.
It is
Like I couldn't
gorgeous.
hope for anything better. It's unfortunate with some of the imports and stuff that we did get. I would put that more so on the breeder and not even Ashley, honestly. The Indonesian forest dragon we got, like its failure to thrive after a couple of years, like fungal, that could have been anything. It was foreign to Canada, so it was like I'm assuming maybe it came in from wherever it was originated, or maybe it's something from the bloodlines, because those Dilophosaurus or Dilophosaurus dilophosaurus, rather, they're not really present in the hobby too much either.
Yeah.
So we have limited bloodlines that we are working with, and there's European imports, and there's some people in America, I think, working with them, the US. But I haven't actually seen a proper pair here in Canada. And we did have a pair, and I'm sad that they passed. But
I have seen Ashley did have a pair at an expo at one point. I don't know where they are, who bought them, or if she still has them or whatever. But there was a pair.
I think Nick's
Intriguing reptiles.
Intriguing reptiles, yes. I think he has some.
Okay, cool, yeah.
He has some really interesting species and stuff too. I like going through like people's like Instagrams and stuff and seeing what they have. It's like, what do you know? It's like, oh, that's so cool. It's like, I like that. It's like, wait, I didn't know that was a thing.
That's next to my bucket list. I'm getting that. Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's really cool. Like, what's the care for that? I was like, oh, yeah, that's a little bit out of reach for me.
Yeah. What's the
And I
price
feel
point
like
on that? Oh, never mind. Yeah.
Right. It's like, how much is that? It's like, oh, yeah, I don't have 9K Canadian.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty expensive reptiles, as they should be. Honestly, some of those species need to be priced at those price points for sure.
Definitely, some of the bigger species, like I wouldn't want people to just readily access, like I don't know, crop monitors. God no.
Yes.
God no.
Yeah, exactly.
No one needs those except for people who can take care of them. The
Probably
big
have
enclosure,
the outdoor space to be able to keep. Yeah, absolutely.
either a big zoo or a big outdoor space. Like I really actually enjoy watching people's content and stuff on YouTube, like Kenan, because I can live vicariously through him and have an Asian water monitor without actually taking care of one.
Yes,
Croc
absolutely.
monitors, rock iguanas, Cuban iguanas, like the stuff that we can't have. Is like,
Down here,
this guy has them. I get to see them, and he gives them all the little loves and scritches. It's like perfect. So
Yeah.
I don't have to keep it. I get to see someone keeping it and enjoying them, and that makes it so much better for me.
I agree. I would love to keep outdoors one day. And
I know Canada would be impossible.
Not here. Yeah, exactly. I'd love to keep outdoors, not in Canada. I'd like.
But then
to
if
move
you move
first.
to Florida, they have all those laws and stuff now. So it's like,
It's
win
a
or
decision
lose.
of where. Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
I know someone, I think it was Adam, talking about moving to Texas. It's like, Texas is really hot though. I don't know if I could live there.
Keep quite a few species outdoor year round there.
Yeah, and you could, I think, keep more than what Florida permits. So
Yeah.
within reason.
Yeah.
That and
Well,
like, I always get the question from like coworkers or friends and families, like, oh, do you have like venomous stuff? It's like, you can't have that here.
here.
There's laws on it.
Awesome. So, Marlena, I want to say thank you very much for coming on, and I want to say thank you very much for being, one of the pioneers for the mountain horn dragons in Canada.
Thank you. Thanks
They
for
may
having
only
me.
be, no, for sure, they may only be 7 babies, but those 7 babies I think are super, super, super valuable, and hopefully,
I'm
through
excited.
the people can start keeping them and breeding them and all of that. And as we kind of
100%.
discussed before the episode, you do keep a lot of really cool species that we didn't even
I
touch on
do.
today. So we'll have you back on, and maybe we could talk about the Smithy and all those other awesome. Oh, there's a cat popping up behind you now.
Skittles. Her
Yes.
tree's right behind me. I'm in the kitchen.
I just saw like a head pop up behind you. I'm like,
She's
that
my old
is
lady.
awesome. But yeah, anyway, Marlena, thank you very much. Can you let everybody know where they can find you on the socials?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm mainly active mostly on my Instagram. So it's Lena's arc. I believe it's Lena's .arc or _arc. I'd have to send you like a link and stuff. We do have like a Facebook page. It was hopeful to be like our reptile shop, but it's Dark Exotics D.arc exotics. Not super active on that one though. So if you want to reach out at all, Lena's arc is where to find me most.
Awesome. And I'll have the link for both of those in the description. But yeah, message on
For
Instagram.
sure, I'll
Lena's
send those
Arc.
to you.
There you go. And yeah,
Great.
so thank you once again. And
Thank you.
yeah, sure. And everyone else listening, thank you very much. If you're in Calgary and looking for mountain horn dragons, go grab one of those 5 babies, and then let us know that you grabbed them as well, and come join the Mountain Horn Dragons info Facebook group and connect with the rest
I
of the
love
Mountain Horn.
updates.
Yes, yes, and send updates.
Baby
as well.
updates.
Yes, yes. Awesome. Thank you everyone for listening, and we will
Thank
see
you.
you on the next one.
Bye.